most important for us to realize is that we are absolutely bombarded with information from the media all the time, mostly from when we get up in the morning till when we fall asleep at night. Literally, a lot of us are just receiving media of one kind or the other, whether it is your cell phone and all the things it does, the radio, the television, the internet. It's just coming at us all the time. And what I would suggest to you is that every piece of information that comes to you because the person who spoke it wants to put across to you their particular perspective on a situation. And that doesn't just go for words. If you're given an image in the media, you'll find that that image is given to you to give you a particular perspective, right? One of the big problems that we have is that those who dominate in any given society are the ones that have the most access to giving us information. So governments, politicians have tremendous power because of the airtime they have to give us information. Different kinds of experts in society also have that kind of power. What is interesting is that whoever we get it from, it is all self-interested. Now, if we consider the situation of crime in Trinidad and Tobago right now, there's a big question over whether it would be possible to give the facts on crime, the facts, all the facts, which I presume would be statistics, and if we did that without anything else, any other statement, would that tell us about the crime situation in Trinidad and Tobago? Now, you might think, yes, of course it would. But the reality is, for you, that it might not. Because if you read all those statistics, you might feel that you would never want to visit Trinidad and Tobago, that it was the most unsafe place on the face of the earth, when in fact, I'm sure most of you would agree with me that it simply is not that. So even the facts put across a message, because someone puts those facts down. They have a particular thing in mind, but you receive those facts from everything that is inside your mind, everything that constitutes your experience of life, which causes you to respond to those facts in a particular way. So even if you have just the facts will be distorted by the way in which you perceive them, right? So the most you can do to try to get a balanced perspective is to get as many perspectives as you can and try from all of those to pull out what might be the truth, okay? Now, I went online just to do a little bit of research about our current situation and what people were saying about it. It was very interesting, and I will just refer to some of the things that I picked up. The first one tells us that Port of Spain is the new Baghdad, right? Port of Spain is the new Baghdad. That is the headline. The subline is United Nations compares TNT murder rate to Iraq, okay? Now, I don't know what you think about that, but it seems to me very clear that even if the murder rate in Port of Spain is comparable to the murder rate in Baghdad, we are looking at two very different societies. We're looking at a kind of crime which is entirely different in one society from the other. And yet here we have this headline telling us that Port of Spain is the new Baghdad. Right. Now, if we move on for just 1 minute, we then find that Caribbean Human Development Report on Citizen Security, UNDP misquoted in relation to the Caribbean Human Development Report. And there you have a full disclaimer by the United Nations Development Program, wishing to advise through the press release that the organization was misquoted in the Trinidad Sunday Express, entitled Port of Spain Murder Rate Comparable to that of Baghdad, right? So immediately you see that someone has taken something that they believe to be authoritative. It wasn't the actual document. The whole thing was distorted, but nevertheless, it has been fed to us. What is so interesting about that is that we know that newspapers deliberately do that kind of thing. They publish things knowing that they will have to retract them the next day. It doesn't matter, because they will have sold their newspapers with that misinformation today, okay? Now, crime in Trinidad, the rising Trinidad and Tobago murder rate. And this is a kind of touristy something, giving you an idyllic Trinidad beach scene, and then a body on the ground, murder in Trinidad and Tobago. And this is telling you that despite the beauty of Trinidad and Tobago, if you're a sensible tourist, you will not come near the place because of the level of crime in the country. And the little picture says, looks like paradise, perhaps appearances can be deceiving, and goes on and on and on that theme. And it's interesting because, as so many things online do, it has a whole set of comments to follow. Some of them are agreeing, a lot of them are disagreeing. So we have something like, I read your article and I found it quite informative. As a born Trini who presently lives in Tobago, my advice to visitors is come, but be very careful with who and the places you associate yourself. Seek proper guidance, and you will enjoy your stay. Be blessed, okay? Which is probably a pretty sensible comment, you would agree. But there's all kinds of everything. So you get this particular perspective. And I often think that when we give so much coverage in our media to crime, we don't think about the way that is going to be received outside. Because it really is received in a very different way from the way in which we will receive it living within the country. Then we have, well, who else do we have, boy? We have Selwyn Ryan. Selwyn Ryan, who assures us that he's been asked to undertake a root and branch analysis of the problems of black male risk, so to speak, right? Okay, so what he tells us basically is that, yes, he's investigating this particular problem, but he's actually speaking to the state of emergency, and he's saying that we need to recognize, and perhaps he's right, that it is in the interest of the opposition for the state of emergency to fail as a means of seeking out crime. Now, we may or we may not agree with that, but what I think we can see very clearly from that is that anyone who really talks to us about the state of emergency is doing so from a particular perspective. They believe in it or they do not for different reasons, many of which may be political. There may be others as well. The big debate, the racialization of the problem is another aspect of the engagement with what they are saying that people will have as they speak. What happens to us is that we look to authorities for right information, and we very, very rarely get it. I'll give you an example. I'll probably have to leave you with this example. A few years ago, there was a case that went through the law courts of a woman who was convicted of murder, of killing her common-law husband. The woman had been systematically abused in every possible way over a period of 12 years. The way that the and I'll tell you about two things, the media and the judge. Perhaps the judge, in this case, is more important. The media changed entirely. The case went before the courts. The woman was convicted. Everything in the media at that time would have led you to believe this woman was totally guilty, totally unforgivable. What she was apparently not forgiven for was the fact that she had herself, in the very last stages of this experience, taken a lover, and the society condemned her for that. But all she had ever done was open the door for the people who actually came in and committed the crime. But she was the one who was always listed as first in the list of murderers. She took her case to, well, her lawyers appealed. 4 years later, it came back, and she was no longer to hang. Her sentence was reduced to about 10 years because it was proven that she was suffering from battered wife syndrome. What was very interesting was that the judge, in summing up in that appeal, showed every level of prejudice that had originally been shown against the woman. He very deliberately went into great detail of the fact that she had taken a lover, etc., 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 and all that that meant. And importantly, he showed that he had absolutely no comprehension of what battered wife syndrome entails, because it's actually, the symptoms of it involve a kind of learned helplessness, an incapacity to act, a blaming of oneself for the event, and so on. None of which was given any coverage at all in what he said. So that, to me, is very, very telling, because if we looked at anybody for an ultimate word, it would be someone like a judge in a case. So it's hard to meet that level of bias there. So basically, you have to be very discerning when you're reading, when you're listening, and you have to think about where people are coming from. And I would actually advocate that we teach something that is called critical media literacy in our schools, so that young people are taught that it's not that you just believe everything that you hear in the media or see in the media, but you have to learn to discern what is going on there, looking at what is being said and how it is being said. Okay, thanks so much.